I'd like to welcome everyone. First item on the agenda, let's go ahead and do the approval of the agenda and the prior meeting minutes.
Motion to approve it, Chairman.
All right, and I'll second it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that takes care of that. Since Brian's not with us right now, we'll go on to the next item. Closed session pursuant to North Carolina Statute 143-318-11A1 in order to prevent disclosure of competitive health care information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 122C through 126.1 or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes, and to consult with attorneys pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A3. Is there a motion?
Motion moved into closed session, Mr. Chairman.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, next report of the chair. Talk a minute about appointments. Tracy's and Ron have done a lot of work going back through digging back through the archives minutes. And during a regular meeting, this is, here's what we need to do. We'll do this under one motion, is to renew Steve Smith, Mike Norris, Dr. Kahn, and their respective appointments for additional 3-year terms. CFAC will actually make a recommendation for Judy Johansson's position in January.
Hopefully.
They'll also, we need a motion to approve Ira Dove to fill the attorney with healthcare expertise slot vacated by Pam Holcomb. And it's up for renewal in December 2018.
Will Ira do it?
I think so. And,
He ain't doing that now.
Yeah. And a motion to confirm that Nancy Baker, Dr. Heck, Joyce Edwards, Michael Lavender, Morris Pittman terms are set to expire in December 2018 and will be up for renewal at that time. A motion to confirm that Ronnie Bill, Pat McGinnis, Rick French, Dr. Rick Munio, Billy Kennedy, Jim Holland, and Gary Blevins terms are set to expire in December 2019 and are up for renewal at that time. And then a motion, or all part of that, a motion to postpone the vote on chair and committee appointments until the January retreat. And that is towards the end of January on the date.
27th and 28th, I believe.
But anyway, that's just for information purposes. And, have you signed up to go to the council meeting by any chance? Yes, sir.
When is it?
Next week. Any chance
We
you
got
can go?
meetings.
Okay.
Can you make sure to let them?
I'd love to. I want to work that booth.
Oh, you're gonna have fun down there.
Oh, yeah. We went several times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think that's pretty much all I have. Ron, you want to give your report? The legislative and DHHS updates?
Well, let's see. A lot of news about Cardinal, huh? I don't know that we have any greater insight than anything you read in the newspaper or hear in the media.
Yeah.
Pretty rough situation. And of course, the rest of us are always concerned that people generalize from that situation to the whole lot, which is terribly unfair, and we work against that, but nevertheless, if you're looking to be critical, people do take advantage of that position. The amendment to the waiver, 1115 waiver's been submitted. I have to confess that I've not had a chance to read through that yet. And I think that, yeah, since we last met, there's also the request for information was published. And we will be submitting a joint response to that on behalf of the other members of the coalition and Vaya. Technically, you have to submit individually, but we expect to have a common response and then just have individual letters. You know, those are just like fishing expedition by the state to see what anybody's gonna say, and people don't say too much because you don't wanna tip your hat about anything. And I'm guessing it's gonna be a busy January, you know, with the General Assembly. They're gonna have a lot to deal with in terms of Medicaid, and you're gonna need, you know, for the Secretary to do what she wants to do, there's gonna have to be some laws. You know, a bunch of things are gonna have to change. What happens about the tailored plan, what the relationship is between the LME MCO system and that. I mean, there's just a number of undetermined policy questions. I think one of the first ones that will be faced is around the desire to move the mild to moderate population of ours. In other words, individuals, and we still don't know, well, we know the criteria that will be used to define the tailored population. That's in the latest, I'm going to call it white paper, the update to the white paper. Is a very lengthy list of the diagnoses and services that would be part of the tailored plan. And the estimates now are that that would be about 120,000 people statewide. So you could imagine there'd be a large number of folks that we manage to care for now that would not be part of that tailored plan. Secretary desires to move that population and that capitation to the standard plans, where those individuals would be getting integrated care and have all of their needs, both behavioral health and physical health, dealt with by the successful applicants for the procurement around the standard plan business. That would be a big change for us in terms of how our population would look. It'd be a much more significantly involved.
But would be good for us.
If they can do our capitation right. Well, let me finish. There's a big, we're coming up to a big fork in the road. So in, let's say, giving up this part of our population and our capitation, what do we get for it? Is there then a guarantee that there would be a tailored plan and that we would be, you know, eligible but preferred for those contracts? And of course, if you're going to give something up, you want to get something, right? Otherwise, you got a rope and you don't know whether you found a rope or lost a horse. Ronnie Deal would say.
Yeah.
So the big fork in the road politically, from a policy position and a joint political challenge, will be that negotiation around the mild to moderate population being taken away from us and put into that standard plan business. And then as a result, you know, what guarantees do we get around our future? That's the one we're barreling down the road for. So is it good for us?
Could be.
Depends.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of, well, we're having active conversations about that now. That's about the gist of it. If people have any questions. I think Tracy has some news for us, doesn't she?
I think I mentioned to some of you, and we talked about this in the compliance committee, but Vaya Health had made a referral of Medicaid fraud against a practitioner in our network, Mr. Joseph Corzilius. He pled guilty on Wednesday, June the 7th to healthcare fraud, and his sentencing was this morning. And so I provided a victim impact statement in court this morning, and Mr. Corzilius was sentenced to 24 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release, and he must pay restitution in full to Vaya in the amount of $436,000.
Good work, Tracy. Thank you so much.
It's not me, and it's the Special Investigations team who did all the work, and did a really good job, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the federal investigators. Thank you.
Yeah, but if you fumble it before you take it to the man, all that stuff don't matter.
Well, you know, the parents who spoke up when they got an EOB that didn't make any sense to them,
Yep.
or it started.
That's what started the case. We had a parent who called our complaint line and said, hey, I just got this EOB and I've never heard of Mr. Corzilius, and my wife has never heard of him, and I checked with the school and they don't know why he'd be on there, and so just letting you know this isn't right, and that's what started the investigation.
Check your EOBs carefully.
Anything else, Ron, do you have any other questions?
I do not. We done?
I think we're done. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
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 I'm gonna run to care partners.
Hey.
I have a schizophrenic life. I dive into this and then I go home to do woodwork. Good to see y'all. How y'all
Get your
doing?
brain back, huh?
Like innovator of the year.
A copy of that decision.
Well, I'm on the. He's on the same third.
The names are split up. So we have Jenny Johnson, get your name. Who's gonna come up with these two?
Sounding good, are they using the same? Yep.
When we get through that, you're gonna
Oh,
try
shoot, we should be in all the photos.
Proud to meet those girls.
to go home and have.
Oh, this kid.
Okay, so, I'll just one more thing with Christie comes here and
I
tells
think you
us.
have a shot if you come back. I think you have a shot.
Or maybe just they remove them?
Announcing,
Oh.
announcing these.
You talking about the
Yeah.
She's a good one.
They did really good.
You sure you want to be here? I had a really weird physical feeling all week. I didn't have a headache or something wrong with my stomach. It was up and down.
Are you staying in here or are you going to finance?
Not
Well, thank you for being here. Please, stay as long as you want.
Stephen, how you get along?
Rick's been really sick. We didn't know if he would be here today or not. So it's really, you know, and I was watching the news this morning. They said the flu shot's only
No, I
got 2%.
don't think they'll say anything.
Yeah. I knew that, but it was just, I thought it was really low. They said it was a 2 year Well, it was in the NPR this morning where I heard it.
Well, I've got a little incubator, you know, my little granddaughter, she's
Is that baby coming?
yeah, my third one's here now. She's over the holidays, I went down to Charlotte. She's got one that's on.
When, this morning?
My son is his.
Before I left this morning.
Yeah, she's been in for 3 days. I'm just getting him to go crazy.
With this little kid.
24/7, you know, I'm like,
So the baby's okay and everything? Baby's home? That's good. That's a big deal. 3 grandchildren.
Three girls.
Wow.
All of a sudden.
Yeah, it's rare to have girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All girls so far.
So,
That's
take
fine.
care of yourself. Stay as long as you want. Have you heard from Gordon? Does he live in the big lot?
Good to see you again. How you doing?
So my list of things this week, tell me what, regardless, yes, everything that's out in the paper.
Enter your passcode followed by the pound or hash key, and I'll connect you.
Oh, yeah, I've got it, Brian.
So we'll get you a full packet too. Oh, you got a full
I
packet?
picked one up, thanks.
Okay.
Good. I was just asking her about the agenda for this week. Welcome once again to the Vaya Health meeting of the Regulatory Compliance and Quality Committee meeting. I'm Billy Kennedy, I'm the chair of this, and they won't let me off it, so here I am. Let's go around real quick and just introduce ourselves so we can know what our names.
I'm Jack Klein, I'm the co-chair, and Billy and I are not the same person, because we're both here.
But we've been real glad that we've been able to, on our schedule, been able to have one or the other of us here most of the meetings.
I'm Marvin Sanders, I'm the Risk and Regulatory Affairs Director.
Andrea Hartman, Regulatory Compliance Manager.
Rachel Smith, IDD UI Manager at Vaya.
Steve Ziggy, Quality Management Director here at Vaya.
Patty Wilson, Senior Director of Quality and Performance Improvement. Julie Rackle, Vice President.
Brian Shipman, acting TCL Director.
Tracy Hayes, General Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer.
Yvonne French, TMH Liaison.
Okay, thank y'all so much. I guess the first thing we need is an approval of the agenda, then you want to add something to it?
If you do not mind.
I don't mind at all. So we're going to approve, if somebody can move to approve the agenda with Tracy having a new part in it. Do I have a second? I guess that'd be me. Oh, Jean, you can. Thanks. Okay, well, Tracy?
Sure. I just wanted to provide an update. I think for a couple of months I have shared with you about the fraud referral that we made to the state regarding a practitioner in our network, Mr. Joseph Corzelius, and that he had pled guilty in June and that sentencing would be in November. The sentencing was this morning. I was present in federal court along with Brandy Lamb, who is our SIU director. I presented a victim impact statement on behalf of Vaya Health. I have given a copy of that to you all. I read that to the court. Mr. Corzelius' attorney was seeking a 6-month sentence followed by 6 months of house arrest. The federal sentencing guidelines call for between 24 and 30 months. Mr. Corzelius was sentenced to 24 months in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release, and he must pay full restitution in the amount of $436,000 back to Vaya. They also approved an order seizing all of his assets and property, so that will go towards the restitution. Whatever is not covered by that, he will be required to make monthly payments until it is paid off.
Well, that's a good resolution. It's a sad thing we have to go there.
It's a
But-
sad case, but just wanted you all to know that we had that happen.
Well, thank you. So I guess the next thing is the approval of the August minutes that were in the packet. Can we get a motion to approve those? Second. I'll move it then and you can second it then. All in favor? Aye. Okay, I guess we'll move right on. We got a lot in this packet today, so Marvin, I guess you're first.
Okay. If you notice, I think since the last time we met, I've updated our target numbers to reflect our new monthly goal of 6.58. So in September, we should have been at 19.74, and we were at 21 people moved into supported housing. So we are very pleased since this, again, is a super measure, that we are exceeding that.
And that's been one we've had a hard time meeting, partially because of housing availability in the month of May.
That is correct. And Brian and his team have really stepped up in completing and ensuring that we are meeting that goal. Last year, we did not meet the targets that were set by the state. So I'm very pleased with Dr. Brian and his first one.
Well, thanks. It's good to get those numbers up before the super measure takes effect in next year.
There are still some areas that we are not meeting our target. You'll see that.
Who just joined?
This is Pat, and please, yeah, I'm doing the finance committee. I dialed the wrong code in first. I'm sorry I'm late.
That's all right, Pat, thank you. We'll mark you down as present.
Thank you.
So, with the percent of individuals transition within 90 days of the slot issue, we're still slightly below what our target is. We're 71%, and our target is 80%. With the number of days from slot issue to transition, the target was 90 days. You'll see next month that we've been given a cushion because it moved up in the dashboard this month to 100. So we're still slightly out of line with the new target even, but we do have a little bit of a cushion. And justification for the cushion is the 90 days plus 10 days of transition planning.
So moving in the right direction.
Right. We continue to be at 100% with our tenancy support. Our fidelity IPS, you see that we're still not a target for our overall numbers, and we're at 61 right now. We do have a target for the enter at risk folks who are in IPS SE, and that is 6. We're slightly below our target. Since these are always behind, I always have fresher data than what I'm able to show you.
Right.
And we did just receive that data, I believe it was yesterday, that we are now on target with this.
Okay. Yes.
So that's looking good. For our in-reach and transition data, we are still exceeding on the number of individuals with documented in-reach contact in the previous 90 days. We're still above our target on housing status after 90 days, and then those last two, they do not have goals or targets. And so Brian and his team have talked about establishing some internal targets for us to be working toward, and I think they're involved in doing that right now because we'd like to see those increase, even though we don't have a state mandated target for those. Quality of life surveys. One of the things that we found out recently was that this data is, I believe it's 60 days. Is that correct, Brian? 60 days behind.
Yes.
So the data that they're reporting for September is really 60 days prior to September, which is one of the reasons that our internal numbers didn't really match what we were getting on our dashboard. So Brian and his team are working to, and Stephen's team are working to figure that out and refine that.
Well, that's the case with a lot of our numbers. I mean, at least the claims and stuff, we have to wait until they're processed to actually put in to update. So the last 3 months are taken with a grain of salt, I guess I should say. So we correct.
So even though this is supposed to be September data, we are really looking at quality of life surveys for July. Who's supplying that data? The state supplies that data to us. Specifically DMH.
So it's possible that our interventions for this, if that started in July. So we're just not seeing that yet.
Okay.
So the last,
And we did, the dashboard that just came out, we did show some improvement in that, which is looking better. I think it was about 75%, which isn't our target, but it's better than we've been doing. But
So
we're happy about that.
if If I can add, Marvin, just one of our challenges, so it's not a huge number of these quality of life surveys, and we've been trying to reconcile with the state through Stephen's help exactly which ones are due each month. And we've been doing those and still not meeting the targets, so we're just trying to figure out where the disconnect is.
And then these are ones we were having a hard time getting responses back too, but we're getting a better response back on that, is that correct? Is that the same surveys I'm talking about, or a different set of numbers?
That's a different set of
Thanks,
surveys.
thanks.
Multiple surveys. So the rest of this data is comparing us to our other county EMCOs. You can see the first one is a super measure, and we're at 106%. The 106% that's reflected here is the real number. On the dashboard, for the rest of the LEMCOs, their numbers are rounded. And on the dashboard, even our number is rounded to 6. But I have us at the 6.58. I don't have the others at their actual number, so these are the rounded numbers for them.
And there's no baseline for that one yet, I guess. I mean, I guess they can put in an average, but there's no target for that.
There is a target, so each LME-NCO has their own target. So our target for this year is 79. And I don't know the other targets offhand, but Cardinal is significantly more than us. But the actual target is 100% of what your assigned goal is. And so we're at 106% of where we should be right now. So moving on to the 90 days, everybody except for East Point is below target on that. For days transition to a housing slot, everyone is below target except for East Point. We're at 103, which is besides East Point, we'll be third.
And to me, that when everybody except one is under maybe the goals may not be quite realistic there, but it's good we keep trying to improve that.
And we do continue to improve, which is important. The Tennessee support documented, you can see that there are only 2 of us that are meeting that, so we're pleased about that. On the next one, there is no target, so it's just informational data. For the enter at risk and supported employment, so again, we're one of 2 LEMCOs that are actually meeting where we should be. So we're pleased with that. We're also meeting the next one in reach contact, and I'm leading the state in that. Our housing status days, 90 days after a housing slot issued. There are only 3 of us meeting, and we are second in the state with that. There is no target for that next one, just see where we're at. Again, these next 2 slides are ones that Brian is implementing some internal targets for us to improve those. And then our quality of life surveys, you can see that most of us are falling short. But East Point and Partners are meeting their targets.
Good, well that's pretty good news.
Things are looking up, they're headed in the right direction, so I'm pleased to report that.
Thank you, Marvin.
Unfortunately, I have some questions. Okay. Who are the group, and how do you qualify to be in the group that's certified TCO? There are 5 criteria that's outlined in the settlement. Criteria are you're in a state psychiatric facility. Each criteria you have to have an SMI or SPMI. The first one is state psychiatric facility, and you have unstable housing on discharge. If the others relate to being in or at risk of entry into adult care homes. And there's different criteria for the different levels of adult care homes.
Okay, so institutionalized adult care homes, not jail.
Not jail.
Okay. Why don't we have internal data? Why are we waiting on old data that comes from the state? these things that we have access to. We do have access to some of the data. Some of the data we cannot generate internally because of the system that we are forced to use with the state.
And we get graded on their data, not our data. So if they don't job, and that's one of our challenges with quality of life, we think we've met it, they don't think so, so that's why we've been trying to reconcile some of that.
You have to have your internal data to challenge.
Right.
And also, it's more honest and accurate if you want to know where you have problems, you're going to see what you're doing. And I know it's extra work. You do have to do this stuff, so I'll shut up. And we do have internal data, so it's not bad. But as with the quality of life survey, sometimes our internal data, for various reasons, doesn't match their data. But being, for example, supermeasures, we're measured against what they report as the data.
If you have some of those discrepancies, it'd be good for us to see those perhaps, and to help understand some of those differences there sometime.
Okay.
Anything else, Jack? All right, Stephen?
All right, so, thank you, sir. Next up is the core performance measures. This format's still the same, so I'm going to kind of breeze through this. But I do want to note on slide number 5, you'll see a bit of a decrease on the percent of calls abandoned from normal, and we are the highest in the state. So we normally trend around 2, 2.5, something like that some years. And although it's, 3.75 I think is where it's at, it's not a large percentage up, but it is significant. And what we've actually found once we dug into this is starting in July, and we've seen this kind of upward trend since July, but starting in July we were answering 211 calls. And there's a lot of those calls that are coming through as just static, and they're being counted as abandoned.
And what's a 211 call? I'm not familiar.
So is it star 211?
Just a general information
Kind of,
number, okay. So they're not even necessarily calling specifically to y'all.
Right. So, so we just did a little more research on this, and the state was getting these static calls too, and they're not really sure what they are. If they don't even think it's a phone line actually trying to reach us. They think it's something happening in the phone lines that it's connecting to our phones and causing our abandoned rates to increase. So
We're working on that.
the state's working on that. So
We get phone calls all the time that don't even answer our phone and show up as our caller ID, and they're don't even come through, so.
So there's really, unless you have a little sheet in there marking down 1, 2, 3, 4/, there's no way to track what's going on.
and so that's what we've actually
Is that right? That's ridiculous.
customer service, because we alerted that customer service, hey, there's a little increase in here, it's nothing, we're not going out of compliance, we're just going to be aware of it, so they started tracking it, and that's what they figured out.
Good.
So, what we can do about it, I don't really know right now, but it's something to note.
I guess all those calls aren't recorded.
It's all just static.
I know, but I mean, if somebody had the time, could they go back and actually?
If you have to go back and listen, it's manpower.
Yes, that's huge amounts of time, I know, so.
Check them out.
And I'm not even sure if there's it's coming at a certain time, or what is, from what we know now, it's just a random call at a random time.
So we're tracking that manually as best
As
as.
far as I know,
Callers
I'm not
can.
sure exactly what customer service is doing.
They are tracking it, Andy.
Thanks, that was one I had circled. About my eye, too.
So then we'll move into person served. If you recall, again, once this data matures, those rates on slide 7 will increase. And rumor has it, there's a lot of, Dr. Khan, I think you have a page full of questions, is that what I hear? So I'm just going to go until you stop me.
Too bad, sure.
Okay. So then after the person served, we move into authorizations. Again, you'll note in July.
Well, hang on, I did have something on this monthly comparison.
Okay.
It looked like, and it seemed to be carrying through all the time, May seemed to spike all the way through there in several things. The person served, maybe not comparison report, but the monthly comparison report, we jumped up a lot, and I was just wondering if that was different data or if that's some kind of seasonal trend we're seeing.
So,
I know summertime when kids get out of school, sometimes,
so what happens is, we report this based on authorizations, and then on the fourth month, we replace it with claims. So May would be the jump in.
more, okay, that's what it is. Okay, thank you.
But numbers that go up in the last 2 or 3 months, they're not likely to go down if they were based on claims. And we did have that in mental health inpatient.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's,
substance abuse, that's coming up.
right. And, yeah, we'll talk about that in a second,
Okay.
because it's usually because they move to a different funding source.
Oh,
So they'll come in being state funded, and they realize they have Medicaid, so they'll switch over to Medicaid.
so the maturation does affect those numbers also, I understand.
And on chart 11, I guess we're higher because we've got a higher penetration rate in the uninsured, the highest of any of the LME MCOs, I think. Thank you.
We keep going, I'll just let you answer our questions. So then we go into authorizations. Note in July, you have those reductions. Looks like a significant drop off in the reductions of authorizations that are coming in. That is due to we made a decision in utilization management not to require authorizations for some of the services, and so that's a significant drop in money that are coming in.
And that streamlines the process too.
Projects.
That's a good,
On all sides. So then you have the authorization appeals and things like that. Any questions about authorizations before we jump into grievances?
I guess on chart 18, I guess that was that April jump. I guess I was wondering if that was a timing of a settlement or something we had. Chart 18 down at the bottom, go from 13-ish% to 18% in May, 19% in April. I guess I'm looking at the wrong line. Look at the statewide. We're at 32%. The statewide is 19.8. Just wondering what's going on there.
I'll have to check. I'll have to go back and check. I'm sorry.
That's on that chart 18.
one of the things is that's a small number, 20 is a small
Oh,
number.
that's right.
So
Okay.
that's small.
You don't see a lot of very low usually small.
That's great. I didn't catch that, Jack. Thanks. That's a good point. We've caught that before.
And again, same thing on 19, look at 3.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Next up, you have grievances. Nothing really significant to note. No movements of claims.
And then on that chart, page number 26, I was wondering why we were getting longer on our processing, on our number of days for processing non-Medicaid claims.
I know for Medicaid, we usually run right around 9 days to process. But the state side, we do have every now and then we jump up to over 10, 11, so I'll have to check on why. And I'm wondering if it's, I don't want to guess, I'm not sure.
Yeah, could have been just more people needing services that way.
So, I'm not sure. Because the number of claims received that month were a little bit higher than normal, but nothing significant.
Well,
But
thanks.
with the non-Medicaid claims toward the end of the fiscal year, which May is in, providers are working hard with their claims department to reconcile claims so that they're getting credit for those non-Medicaid services as the fiscal year comes to an end.
Okay.
So while the claims volume might not go up, there's more behind-the-scenes work between the providers and our claims staff for reconciliation as providers, especially our bigger providers, are trying to get credit for all the services that they've provided across the year.
And so that's another reason for this May spike going on too, because all this is happening at the end of the quarter.
All right, we'll move into community hospitalization.
And I guess that same thing on May would be, that jump would be in the chart on page 28, or actually 28, would be that same May reporting and claiming, okay.
So to review, the non-Medicaid, this is on page 29.
Okay.
The non-Medicaid mental health inpatient admissions can later turn into Medicaid, and those numbers therefore go down. Okay.
And it's almost,
And then the ones on the chart below that go up.
Yes.
Same amount, okay.
they've got the same amount, but
Yeah,
there's some variance there.
got it. That's good.
We'll move into the rapid readmissions. Evaporation. Any questions there?
It looks to be kind of following patterns up and down.
I would caution you on page 35, this is a really low number, so that line is bouncing all over the place.
So that showed that 36 would be, I guess it's not a percentage, it's a number too,
I'm sorry, say that again?
but on the chart 36, we're at 202,
Right.
and that's just a number there, so, yeah.
So that's the distinct count, and it's based on the rate. So our rate is at 1.25, but it's 202 people. Or,
I'm glad those are small numbers.
well, I mean, we're looking here, it's,
Well, we want our readmits to be exposed to zero explosives. So it's
Right.
good they're low, it just makes it hard to evaluate statistically if they're changing.
right.
But on the substance use, if they're there for that, they're likely to be more remixed perhaps than others, because that's part of the healing process, is I understand it. If that would affect this number here too.
Still, it's not. We don't
Or
have
would
the
that
total,
be-
we don't have the numerator, I mean the denominator, but it's a small number. Well, we do sort of, it looks like, a couple of hundred admissions for mental health. So that's a real small number.
Yes,
I
that's right.
think it's an unbelievably small number. I mean, I think the readmission rate for pneumonia is much higher than that. In the community hospital, it is for substance abuse admission, that's kind of
There's a
unbelievable.
So national average for rapid readmission for mental health is roughly around anywhere between 13 and 17 depending on the switch rate.
Yeah.
We average right around, we've gone as low as like 8% all the way up to 17. So we average right around in between there. So
Okay.
we actually are working with, on one of our quality improvement projects is working with to reduce that rate. We're starting out in one hospital and see what we can do to target that one hospital, and then whatever we learn from that, our goal is to spread it. So we've done some literature reviews and some a whole bunch of extra work on the side to figure out what's the best way to manage that for readmissions. And so we're working with internally improving our process for it, working with the hospital to improve the process with it, and then there's several other projects that are going on that will impact that. The follow-up after discharge within 0 to 7 days, working with the providers for that, some value-based contracting and stuff like that.
And will that total care plan affect that too? Because it'll be
Really well. Okay. Several interventions going on that our goal is to impact that from several different angles. Next up, we jump into the emergency department. You will note that there is on on slide 45, there is a increase in driver emissions into ED, but it also coincides with an increase in the ED emissions. So note that this is on a 3-month lag, so this, the most recent data we have for this is June.
Okay, and these are not inpatient, these are people coming into the emergency room. Now, how do you get that data?
It's an ED bill, it's an ED claim.
Oh, okay, this is from claims processing. Okay, got it. That's very not a problem. Does the opioid epidemic figure into any of these numbers? Or is that too?
I'm sure it does, because this measure shows mental health, substance use, and individual developmental disability, so it's all three populations. So I'm sure it does.
It's also impacted by community education processes where not only are you educating, physicians are educating themselves about the epidemic in the community. When you present, there's less stigma attached to that. And you might get to that real answer quicker than you might have in the past. And the docs are coding a little differently as well.
And finally, we jump right into the super measures. Slide 49 is the reference, kind of in a nutshell where they are. We still don't have word or any information from EMA regarding specs, so we're doing our best. The first one is the TCLI members housed. And I think Marvin kind of went through that already, so unless we have specific questions, we'll skip that one. Next up is the Innovations Integrated Care measure. So this is members that had a preventive care visit within 12 or 24 months regarding, depending on their age. You see that chart on page 54. We run this measure continuously just to make sure what's happening. And that number increases as more claims come in. So every time we run it, it increases. In fact, there was a week span that I ran on Monday and I ran on Friday, and it rose 2%. So it's continuously coming up. And so by the time we're measured on this in January, well, we measured on our progress in January, but we will not get that report until July. So by July comes through, we should be at that 90%.
And you're looking at that along the way.
Oh, yeah.
That's the most important change we're trying to make in our analytics is working across Vaya with folks in MIS and the quality improvement folks and the data integration folks to be able to move to predictive analytics. We've got to get to that predictive place to have any lasting impact. The interventions that are being done with the super measures are all really important. They're making a difference from running a report and every care coordinator gets a report and they contact anybody who hasn't had the report. That's important, but if we get to predictive, solid predictive analytics, we can't solidly make a consistent change.
And then once you get that in place, you gotta see how it plays out
It's
and
the game
constantly
change.
tweak it to make it accurate.
I will say there's several interventions with this one, especially using the PTC platform. There's several enhancements that are being put in place that we can try to see a bit easier and tasks and things like that. So besides the notifying the care coordinators, we're also have some enhancements in our systems.
Unless you need it for a grant application, leave those last 3 months out of your
The last
you know. So, sometimes those are good. I know in Allegheny County we used, we had 2 infant mortality deaths in 1 year, and it put us at the top of the state because we had so few deliveries, right? So it was very good for getting merchandise grants and all kinds of stuff like that. If that's going to be helpful, keep that steep. But anyway, no.
It's good to know. And then next up is the follow-up after discharge. this is a lot, this is a lot bigger. There's several different groups working on this. It is so what this revolves around is the individuals that are discharged from inpatient facility-based crisis, ADACs, or state hospitals, whether or not they have a service within 0 to 7 days from that discharge. Very important it's important on several different reasons. Clinically, people are more inclined to be engaged or initiate and engage in services. It prevents rapid readmissions. It's better for the person. So this is something that, yeah, we're working on for a single measure, but we're working on this as the right thing. What's interesting about this one is we're being measured on what's in NC tracks. So claims have to go through NC tracks and approved by NC tracks, and that's how we're being graded. Not based on the claims that come to us that we've approved. So not only do we have to work on the clinical side and the provider side and the patient side to make sure that the service happens, but then we have to get it through our system and up through the NC track system to ensure we're getting credit for both.
And then we have to have the customers come back for the appointment.
Right.
And that's been one of our problems over the years too.
So for this measure, we're working with groups from claims to customer service to provider network because they each have a piece, care coordination as well. Each have a piece of this, and without each other, none of this is not going to work. What we do on the boots on the ground doesn't really matter if we can't get to the claims.
Right.
And if we get your claims, but it's not having boots on the ground, again, it doesn't matter. So navigating and we're in the process of navigating that and getting those groups to make sure that they're talking and communicating and working together and not against each other. So that's why on slide 55 you see the DMH results as a benchmark, and then below that you see the Vaya results, which are significantly different.
They're all shy of 40%.
They are all shy of 40%. We have several programs in place that hopefully, working with provider network, we have several interventions with providers to make sure that service happens. We have, globally, our goal is to get them on the day of discharge. So we have a whole intervention looking at getting as soon as they discharge from the hospital, because that's when we know where they are, because after that, we're not sure. So we have a intervention for the day of discharge for all those different, the FPC, the community hospital, those places. Then we have another plan for when they leave the hospital. So the goal is between those two kind of sweeps, we'll get most of it.
And you're getting that information from the hospital in a timely fashion?
So sometimes.
I mean, you can't have providers there if you don't know when they're being released or discharged.
So one of the key points to this, to make sure that people are getting that follow-up visit, is the relationship between the providers and the hospitals. So what we've done is, recently in Provider Network, we've tried to facilitate that communication and building that relationship. And it's really going to be between the provider and the hospital to make sure they're working cohesively and they have that relationship. Our goal is to give the providers some information so they know they're not walking in cold and just asking about the discharge. So recently we've got an ADT fee, the admission discharge transfer fee. We have our authorizations, because every time somebody goes inpatient, they have to have an authorization. Now, we might not process it, but we know that it exists. So you kind of blending that data, we should get about 95, we should know about 95% of people who are in inpatient. And then providing that, say, hey, at this hospital, there's these people, make sure you either know about these individuals or see these individuals. And so that gives them a little information to walk in, so they're not looking cold to the discharge nurse or the discharge clinician. So they can say, hey, I know you got these people, what's on the schedule, who's going to be discharged. And then so there's that process that we have in place, working on the 0 days and then the 0 to 7 days. Our value-based contracting, we're kind of trying to branch around this as well to give incentives for providers to do this. And then, like I said, the back end, we got to figure out our claims process and make sure we're getting through our system as well as NC checks and NC checks. It's not an easy task.
No. Good luck with NC tracks. Sorry, Bob.
I think next up is the compliance audit.
So actually, it's really short and sweet this month. For the CDW, we haven't received the next quarter, but right now we've had 2 quarters where we are in compliance. So if we receive another quarter where we're in compliance, we will take this off the log. And then I'll only down 2 slides. Off of reporting it out. So once we've met it 3 quarters or 3 quarters in a row or 3 reporting cycles in a row, then we take it off the RC log. If they were to slip, we do keep monitoring, then it would be added back on the log.
But y'all have all that data, it's just what we get presented here.
Yeah, but as long as they're meeting standards, it doesn't really need to be on the compliance log. For incidents submitted timely, we did meet it for the 4th quarter, so I'm looking forward to reporting out the next month, and I'm hoping we'll meet again. I don't know if those numbers are in yet. And just a quick update on our EQR, we received a response back from them on 10/30, and 7 items were not accepted. We put a response together, and we've sent that off, and we're currently just waiting for them to respond back to us on that and see what they have additional that they may need or if it's been accepted. So any questions? Pretty short and sweet this
That's
one.
good news, good.
Yeah.
There are 2 slides remaining in the thing on successes and achievements. We already talked about, we met the TCLI housing standard again in September. We successfully launched our coalition in partnership with Alliance and Trillium. We're very excited about that. 2 Vaya clinicians, Ken Cook and Lori Tolman, participated in a WLOS 13 phone bank that connected viewers to opioid use treatment resources. So this was a really neat thing that we were able to participate in. And Dr. Khan, this one is for you. Care coordination successfully utilized medication reconciliation strategies, resulting in demonstrable positive outcomes for 2 members. And I do actually have the details about that if you want more. So one involved an individual who was assigned a care coordinator who was on over 48 medications, including a combination of prescription, over-the-counter, and supplements. No one had been able to get a full list of none of his providers had been able to get a full list of his medications. Our care coordinator actually went along with CCWNC to his home, and they sat down and went through every single one of his medications in the home to create a medication log. And it's being reviewed by our pharmacist, Dr. Cree, so that we can provide a medication management strategy at his next team meeting. So that was one example. Another one was the guardian of one of our members had stated to the care coordinator several times a concern about medications not working. She felt like he needed to have a medication change. So the care coordinator gathered the medication list, provided that to our pharmacist for a medication risk assessment. What they ultimately learned is that he was not following the regimen. He was not taking the medications as prescribed. So it was relayed to his community support team at the next treatment team meeting. And they are now actively working with him to make sure he's taking his medications as prescribed. So those were just 2 examples of where our medication reconciliation strategies are starting to pay off. We were awarded the Supportive Living Grant for the 2nd year in a row. We're very excited about that. And then this will be formally announced next week. We'll receive the award next week, but Vaya has received the North Carolina Council Programs of Excellence Award in the Public Awareness and Advocacy category for our work around opioid awareness and the Narcan initiative. And then this one is probably my favorite one. I was soliciting good news. I don't get enough good news. This one is awesome. So this is from our housing team. And this is, I think, a nice, happy Thanksgiving story where our housing team was able to help a family of 4, including 2 small children who've been living in the woods for 18 months as a result of many years of mental health and addiction issues. RHA was involved in this particular case. They made the referral to the Permanent Supportive Housing Grant program that we operate. We were able to locate housing for them after they got into housing. They continued services with RHA, continued to work with RHA. They also worked their plan consistently with DSS. Their children have been taken away by DSS because of the living conditions. They were able to purchase a used car. They completed all their court-ordered requirements. And the children were returned to them just prior to Thanksgiving this year. They all had Thanksgiving together. The care coordinator and the housing folks report that it's a quote, their quality of life isn't just better, it's the best they have ever had. Having safe housing has allowed these members to focus on their children and other needs to enable them to live independently and successfully in the community with their children.
What a great story. And, children are innocent in all this. So just the thought of these children living and being homeless. And then, and that was a good one. Thanks for putting that in there, Jesse.
How old were the children?
One was, I believe, 18 months and the other one was 3, so they were very small children.
And that trauma is a lifelong issue. So if you can avoid that childhood trauma, we'll all do better. Maybe
I have a question, Tracy.
Yes.
The coalition partnership.
Well, I'm so glad that Mr. Ingram is here, and he might be able to answer that.
And this is a question for Mr. Ingram. How is this going to help us improve quality? And 100 words or less.
By what measure quality?
Well,
And I'm not trying to, I just want to really be able to best answer your
I
question.
mean, we think we're doing that right now by reviewing data.
Mhm.
So if I rephrase, how will the coalition help us improve our data?
I can't say that there's a specific answer to that right now.
I mean, is that not going to be more challenging as we move away from being more local?
Yeah. I mean, it's like every other aspect of healthcare. Everything that happens, I'm going to be careful about the way I say this, and please hear me. Everything that happens isn't as a result of a drive to make quality better. It does not necessarily make quality worse. We are doing our best to prepare ourselves as an organization, as a quarter of the state, for Medicaid reform, which is going to fundamentally change everything about all of this that we talk about in terms of serving a different population and having different relationships. So it is impossible for me to imagine what anybody here I think would say a successful or a good future for this organization without relationships with other entities, whether that be LME, MCOs, or other organizations, or commercial health plans, or provider-led entities for that matter. So pursuing that, this is kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. To be honest with you, if we, it's interesting. We can't ignore quality, and there's nothing about doing this that should result in sacrificing any quality. It's kind of a separate activity whose impact on quality, I would say, remains to be seen.
So maybe it's prevented by being a survival tactic. And we can do it
You could
better
certainly argue that.
than the other options that will be out there. If we
When
don't-
quality becomes irrelevant,
Yeah.
when you're dead. It's the quality of your casket, So Fair?
Yeah.
Well, I thought one point you made at the County Commission Advisory Board was that we're able to look at each other's practices and which are the best practices. So in the real time, we are sharing that information so that what works for them, that we may not know what works for us, and we're ahead of them, then that can not have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, and I don't, and I'm careful, the older I get, the more cautious I am about over-promising. There is a large part of all of the coalition which is directly related to the 1115 waiver, the Medicaid transformation, per se, okay? Now, it just so happens, we're 3 organizations that do the same thing. Do we all do it the best way there is? I don't know. Do some of us do some things better than others? And will there be a point in time when we look at how we do what we do? And actually, we're coming up upon that time? Yes. Will that result in us doing things better, ergo improving quality? Certainly that is a fair expectation. But I don't want to say that. Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you. Yeah, we're getting a lot of feedback from you there.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
I thought I had muted, let me work on it.
Okay, I guess Tracy, you're next.
Yes, and I may call on Mr. Shuping, who is here. I really just wanted this board to be aware, I know that you should be aware that we have received a list of concerns from Mr. Rice, and I wanted this board to rest assured that I treat any and all complaints, grievances, concerns, including but not limited to those filed by our advocate for the people here, the same. And so I handed it off to Andrea to be filed in our Ethics Point reporting system. It was actually assigned to the Human Rights Committee since it really involved violation of rights. The Human Rights Committee met on November 16th. They reviewed the documented concerns. They concurred with many of the concerns, although they acknowledge that a lot of the concerns are really outside the scope of our authority or control. They did have a lengthy discussion about guardianship, and they generated 3 recommendations that they thought were within the scope of what Vaya could do. And my thought was that it could come to this group for you all to approve or not these recommendations, and if you were to approve them, then management would seek to implement these recommendations. I don't know if you have any questions for Brian, because he was at that meeting.
I just had what next. So are you recommending that we accept these recommendations then? I don't see any problem with them myself. I'm just worried about, I'm just curious how it fits into our overall scheme of things we have to do. Or would you rather not say?
It would really be up to you all to determine if you think this is a priority for us as an organization, and if you want us to do it, we will make it so.
Those were specific for guardianship.
Yes, the concerns were specific to guardianship. And some of this, certainly care coordinators receive updates, whether I could say they receive an annual update. I mean, I think a lot of this is very much best practice. I don't disagree with any of these recommendations, if that's your question.
Okay, that's kind of what I was asking.
I move that we support the efforts of Vaya in pursuing these 3 recommendations.
Do we have a second? All right, all in favor? Aye? Thanks. Okay, well, I think this is good because we just need to keep working to do better. And in this day and age of not everybody being as responsible as we'd like, we just need to keep trying to do better. Is that all you had, or?
That's it.
Okay. Then I guess we're on to the quarterly reports.
Yeah.
This is pretty straightforward. You can see for this is the first quarter data, but our waiver year starts August 1st. It's really from August 1st to September 30th. In August, when the waiver year starts, sometimes we get new routine allocation of slots, but this year we did not. Our total allotment of slots for this year is 1,676 slots, which are broken down into routine slots and reserve capacity slots. Reserve capacity slots are money follows the person for people coming out of institutional level of care, gentlemen community-based waiver, Cap C age outs, people aging out of that program, and then emergency slots. Let's see, so we did, the last time we got a routine allocation was last January 2017. We did get 27 new slots then, and all of those were filled. We also anticipate getting some new slots this January based on some recent legislation that added slots with statewide. So we're looking forward to that. We've got a wonderful registry of unmet needs coordinator that is on top of things and ready to fill them the minute we get them.
How many people are on the waiting list?
Oh, let's see, 1,344.
And that's due to inadequate funding from somewhere.
Yes. And many of those are served with other services and fund sources, which you can see in the bottom paragraph. And we do make active efforts to link people to services when they're available. At the time ending September 30th, we had assigned 3 reserve capacity slots. To date, we've actually assigned 7 of them. So we're on target to fill all of the slots that we get. We've always filled all of our reserve capacity slots, and we do very well to fill our routine slots when we get them. Any questions about this?
That's good.
Mr. Kennedy, I would just like to recognize and thank Rachel for pitching in at the last minute and agreeing to present this report. Mr. Smathers was originally scheduled to present this report and had to be in Raleigh today, so I wanted to thank Rachel for changing her schedule to be here.
Well, we're glad you're here. Welcome. And then I guess the appeals is Steve? Who's going to do that?
Tracy, did you want to do this?
Steve.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I agreed to do that. Dr. Puckett cannot be here. I'm not going to, he has a fairly lengthy report. And he presents this same data to QIC, so I feel confident that Stephen and probably Rachel can help me if we have any questions about any of this data, but he's got a lot of stuff in here. You can see that we had a 1.3% increase in the total volume of our authorization requests compared to the prior quarter in terms of authorizations. Our clinical denial rate dropped approximately 3% in the prior quarter to 2.6%. So we've had a decrease of 53 denials over the prior quarter. There's a return to what is our expected level. So we had kind of an increase last quarter, and we've gone back this quarter to what our typical levels are. I think as Dr. Puckett talked with you last time, the administrative denial rate has declined significantly over time since we've been managing the waiver. It has been at or under 1% for 10 consecutive quarters, and was at 0.5% in the second quarter of 2017. Non-Medicaid denial rate has consistently been lower than that of Medicaid. And non-Medicaid appeals, non-Medicaid services are not an entitlement the way Medicaid services are, so the appeal process is very different. And there's some charts here that talk about partial approvals versus full denials, etc. In terms of Medicaid appeals, Medicaid recipients have 2 different levels of appeal. So first, if they disagree with an authorization decision made by Vaya, they have the right to request reconsideration internally, and that'll be heard by a peer reviewer, a clinician who was not involved in the original decision. They have to go through that process before they can appeal to the State Office of Administrative Hearings. So until recently, our trend had been downward on Medicaid clinical denials. That has started to rise and has pretty much increased primarily as a result of the introduction of the resource allocation model. And so we're seeing more appeals as a result of resource allocation, although we're not seeing very much difference in the outcomes of those reconsiderations or those appeals. So of the 64 reconsiderations conducted in the last quarter, 52 resulted in outcomes not fully in favor of the recipient. 14 of those 52, or 27%, were appealed to OAH. Mediation went forward in 13 of those 14 cases. 5 of those mediations resulted in a settlement agreement, and 7 resulted in an impasse. 7 of the 8 cases proceeded to OAH. 6 of those were withdrawn before going to hearing, and usually what that means is, even if we can't reach a settlement at mediation, we usually continue to talk and try to work things out, especially if the provider can submit more information in support of the need for the services. The single biggest reason why we deny things is the provider has not submitted sufficient documentation to justify the service. And we tend to get that documentation as we go through the appeal process, but it takes time.
More so than the coding, because I know we've had some issues with coding over time too.
Yeah. And so one case resulted in a full hearing that was actually held in Waynesville, and the ALJ's decision was still pending at the time Steve drafted this report. In terms of non-Medicaid appeals, 7 out of 28 were appealed, with the decision being upheld four times, overturned twice, and partially overturned once. Nobody, on the non-Medicaid side, you cannot go to the Office of Administrative Hearings. You can go to a DMH appeals panel, and it has been, I think, 2.5 or 3 years since any one of our members have gone that second step. So,
Authorizations are an internal process.
authorizations are an internal process, although we do have a contractor, Crest, that assists us with peer reviews.
But the data is for the second quarter.
Sorry?
The data is for the second quarter, up to the second quarter, which is June.
Yes, Stephen, that might be a question for you.
There's internal data that our current report is going to recommend in June.
Right, and they do that because the process for appeals could go as far, so there's timelines in it, and so it could go out as far as, I think we still have one pending.
But even the, okay, so that's just the curious, I was thinking it was all of our authorization that it was only 2 quarters. So maybe it has to do just with the consideration.
Yeah, this report is just
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Puckett had also shared, I think for the first time, a peer review concordance report that he prepared. And peer review concordance is defined as the level of agreement between the recommendation made in a clinical peer review referral and then the final determination. So a care reviewer might make a recommendation to deny. So we're looking at how often does the peer reviewer agree with that recommendation. The global concordance rate between referring UM clinicians and clinical peer reviewers was 84.09%, which I believe is considered a very good concordance rate. And so that's the key finding of that report. If you had any questions on that one.
Well, that's good. That shows that our care coordinators are on the same page.
This would be our
This would
folks
be
more
peer.
like Rachel. So people who work for Rachel, not the care coordinators.
Okay,
So.
okay, thanks. All right, I guess back to Stephen.
Well, actually, Dr. Patty Wilson is the chair of the QIC meeting, so I figured I shouldn't take her thunder. She's also my boss, so I'll let her.
He's kind of smart like
We're good, we're glad. That's, we always love
that. Much like you and Dr. Khan, Dr. Martin and I share responsibility for chairing QIC, and we hand off regularly to one another. Much of what you'll see in these few pages about the Quality Improvement Committee you've already heard about. I always just try to remind you what QIC is supposed to be doing, what our purpose is in the universe. And primarily, that is oversight of quality improvement with Vaya internally. Much of that focus right now is on the super measures. There are, in addition to the super measures, there are 2 other quality improvement projects underway at Vaya. One is the inpatient rapid readmission project that Stephen addressed on multiple levels in his report. And the other is the TCLI Quality of Life Survey, which Marvin addressed in his report. That is an important project both for our folks transitioning and an important project for Brian Schumacher's TCLI team. It is, I think, a shining example of what happens when you step back, look for interventions, and utilize quality improvement tools to make a difference in people's lives. Here's where the rubber hits the road, I think, with quality improvement. And then the rapid readmission is something you've been hearing about in this meeting for as long as this meeting has existed. This year, the primary change is that we've really focused it down. As with many projects, it blows up. You start with, let's fix something, and then you go, oh, while we're doing that, we may as well fix this, 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 and this. We're really trying to focus on looking at that national data that Stephen referenced, and why should we reinvent the wheel when we know it's working on a national basis? When our numbers are actually pretty close in line nationally with rapid readmission rates, and then focusing on one hospital. If we can implement it there, then taking it and tailoring it, because it doesn't matter if it's a mission hospital, if it's a mission hospital in Asheville versus a mission hospital in one of the outlying communities. Two totally different cultures and communities. So we have to look at tailoring those plans. But that's where we're at with the rapid readmission project.
And it is a mission we're trying this now?
We're working with Haywood
Okay.
to do this initial.
Well, hopefully that'll be productive.
So one thing that you don't see in this report, because the list is long and varied, are the quality improvement activities going on across the organization. Many of those tie right back to the core performance measures that Stephen talks about, or to the specific measures Andrea doesn't have to report about anymore because they're in compliance. But every one of our regulatory compliance requirements is a quality improvement activity ongoing within Vaya, so that we never lose sight of where those measures are. While they feel like just requirements, all of them are there for a reason. So we keep them on people's radars by making them ongoing quality improvement activities that they report out on in the quality improvement committee report. Jean, I'm so glad you're sitting next to me.
On the innovations goal that we have, where do you get the data about the primary care visit? Do you have an easy practice or?
So we get a feed from DHHS with all the medical appointments and claims from the medical.
That's what it's for. I'm trying to talk to them because they have a year to file claims.
Exactly. Which is interesting. It's a good point. You have a year to submit claims, but we're going to be grading on this at a 6-month window. So just an interesting note to keep in the back of your head about these super measures.
Nobody wants to wait a year to file a claim if they get money.
Sometimes they take on fertility reasons and all kinds of reasons.
Yes, that's right.
But yeah, sometimes it takes a while.
It does take a while.
But when you're looking at a small practice, depending on their billing cycle,
And if they have to do Medicare first.
right,
Yeah.
that whole coordination of benefits process of more than one insurance with a small practice is totally different than a hospital system who has more people than we can fill in this building,
Right.
turning those claims versus a small practice or even a small community clinic where they may still be doing manual billing. Big difference.
You'd be surprised how many IBD individuals have Medicare because of the drawing on their parents. Widely, large percentage.
We did a little research on payers other than Medicaid. I think we found that there's only 42% of our innovation members that have no other payers. So 57%, maybe roughly, rounding of course, but 57% of our innovations members have other types of insurance of some kind. So,
But they're still using Medicaid, or are you saying that's supplemental? What do you know, is there a difference?
Most
they have
insurance will
both.
pay for the services
Yes.
of nations, right? So.
But you have to have the denial from the primary insurance
Right.
before you can bill the secondary or the tertiary.
That's right. Well, good. That's all y'all got? That's great. It was
I have
Okay, go
I'm
ahead,
gonna
Jen.
extend this just.
Please do. We're on
Because I
time.
have a bad question for Matt.
Bring it.
Why is DMIAC, is that right?
Demae?
Oh, it's DMAIC, DMAIC. Why is that going to be better than the cycle I used to call BD-CACA because it was BDCACACA now? Why is it going to be better than that? Why is it going to be better than when we started taking over quality tools that we learned from the automotive industry back when the Japanese were making better cars than the Americans? I mean, that's like 30 years ago. I've been in the QA for 40-something years, and I've seen all these acronyms come and go. So I'd like to know why DMAIC is going to be better than what we're doing now. Other than the fact that I noticed it does help us be more inclusive in terms of the ERQ, EQR, and the other categories where we collect data. Maybe it's more efficient that way, but the process itself.
So, and Stephen, feel free to jump in if you would like to, but let's see how I do with this. So, from my,
A way of explanation that the quality, the QIC had a presentation from Charlie Berry about a new mechanism for ensuring quality, and the abbreviation is DMAIC, which stands for the different steps in the process. And everybody will be converting over to that and the way they used to do things, and not how people hate to do that. So I was just wondering.
we really see it as not better than other quality improvement models. We see it as part of the toolbox. What we are trying to do is elevate quality improvement within our culture. And in order to do that at Vaya, we wanted a tool that could be understandable and that we could minimize replication and get the biggest bang for our buck. When we looked at models, while there are some that are simpler, in fact, when last year, Stephen's team worked with, I think it was 14 providers to do quality improvement projects. They used other tools. This fit from the perspective of meeting our needs in terms of requirement and regulation and being something that people can grab onto. It's not the end all and the be all. It's a hope that it will elevate us in terms of getting closer to industry standard practices in quality improvement mechanisms.
PDSA cycle is actually embedded into the data process.
Yeah. So that people had a problem getting a handle on it or getting their head around what PDCA was, or?
Let me tell you, I had a meeting, Robert Webb, our Chief Information Officer, I had a 2-hour meeting with him yesterday to talk about quality improvement projects and project management and how they mesh or don't mesh. And one of the things he said to the other person in the room, Tim Malacchio, who's a quality improvement, he's a Six Sigma and Black Belt. So he's our guru here. And what Robert said in trying to explain to Tim what we were trying to do is to keep moving forward. In the past, our quality improvement efforts have been a lot of, we have to do this, so let's do it, let's check the boxes and move forward. We're trying to increase our knowledge so that it's not just about checking the box, but we can get to things like making a difference. And we can't do that without giving people a handle for it. And so this is an attempt to do that.
Good luck.
Thank you. That's why Stephen's team and I are spending lots of time together these days. And that's why I spent 2 hours with Robert talking about yesterday, comparing. And quality improvements embedded in project management, so.
Is it part of that?
No.
Demae also, like I said, it's embedded in, or PDSA is embedded into it. So what Demae really does is focusing a lot on the planning part. And really outlines the different aspects of planning. So you have the define the bound, and define the measure, and then you're doing your initial baseline analysis. So that's kind of like the P P and the S or PDS, or it's the P of the PDSA or PDCA. Then you get into the analyze and then you improve and then you control. And so then you have that PDSA cycle, PDCA cycle kind of lives in that analyze, improve, control kind of.
That's better than CAC.
Right. The ongoing cycle of improvement.
And what Stephen reminded me from our conversation yesterday is that we want to start with a problem instead of an idea. That, that quality improvement has to include ideas, but you have to start with a well-defined problem. And that's not been one of our strong points in our quality improvement efforts to date.
A lot of times we go, oh yeah, there's a problem, let's implement this solution. Without really knowing if that's actually the real problem, the root cause of the problem, we're sure from that stuff. So make really forces you to be clearly defined, clearly measured, clearly analyzed to make sure you have that root cause before you just jump in and say, or trying to implement strategies.
I hope it is better.
Keep holding us with these questions and, going, okay, how's this working for you?
Yeah, that's very interesting, yeah. Good, is there anything else, any more information for this meeting? I guess I'll entertain a movement. You got any more there?
Nope.
A movement to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Get a second? All in favor? Say aye. Thank you all so much, and look forward to seeing y'all next month, and keep up the great work.
February.
That's right, we have our retreat in January, so we'll see you all in February.
You good to go, Jerry? Ron, you good to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. Before I do the roll call, there's a number of proxies quickly. Dr. Heck's proxy is Billy Kennedy. Mike Norris is Ronnie Beal. I thought Ronnie was coming back, but maybe he is.
He left his stuff, so.
Okay, he's got to come back. Jim Hollins is giving Michael Lavender his proxy. Steve Smith has given Ira Dove his proxy. And that's all we have. Okay, I'll do the roll call. Nancy Baker. She was
Here.
Here, okay. Ronnie Beal, he's not here yet. Gary Blevins.
I'm here.
Dr. Richard Bunio, is he here?
Here.
Here, okay. Dr. Kahn.
Here.
Ira Dove.
Here.
Jeannie Duncan.
Here.
Joyce Edwards.
Here.
Here, okay. Dr. Heck has given his to Billy Kennedy, Jim Holland, Judy Johansson here. Billy Kennedy. Here. Michael Lavender.
Here.
Pat McGinnis.
Here.
Okay. Mike Norris has given his proxy to Ronnie. Morris Pittman.
Here.
Here, okay. And Steve Smith has given his proxy to Billy Kennedy. Okay, so Ira Dove, sorry. So we have a quorum. Okay, at this time,
Did someone just join?
So it's Rick Bunio. I just had to rejoin. I got disconnected.
Thanks, sorry about that.
okay, at this time we have public comment. We have two speakers. Our first speaker is Mary Short.
Hello, Mary Short and my daughter Katie from Alexander County. So I was on the Vaya website and checking on meeting minutes because they're not there anymore. And it's very frustrating, and I was told at one point that these meeting minutes would be posted for a 30-day period of time, and that's never happened. So I did stumble across the Innovations stakeholder meeting minutes, though, from September. So Katie and I used to attend the Innovation stakeholder meetings in Lenore, and I would take my little video camera and I would record those meetings and I would upload those onto my YouTube site, IDD Caregiver Voices, until I was told that those meetings aren't public and I had to stop recording them. So we stopped going to the meetings. Oh, and then they changed the meetings. So instead of it being a conference call between 3 sites, now y'all have 3 separate meetings so that the people who attend the 3 separate meetings don't know what the other people are saying. So I just think that's it. But anyway, so I'm reading these minutes and it was just fascinating. And of course, my personal sick sense of humor, stakeholders would like Vaya Health to consider taking the following actions and have requested information about, hold the meetings by webinar to make it easier for more people to participate, post the webinars afterwards for people who could not attend. Isn't that funny? The people attending these meetings now must not be aware that I was doing it all along and was told to stop. So anyway, I just wondered if the board of directors would find that humorous as well. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jerry Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We're getting down to a hospital board now. We're getting down to 7 members here pretty soon, you know, and the attorney, of course. Anyway, thank you for having public comment. I want to also thank the recommendations that come down from some concerns that I did to the board. I haven't got to read them yet because I never got public information. So I hear it's in my packet though today. So I'll comment on the substance of it later. The other thing is about Cardinal. You ever heard about them? Well, of course, this is a big item. But I want to leave something to you that really makes sense to me anyway. I think they are some serious white-collar crime in that situation with Cardinal. I think they're serious. And I think it needs to be dealt with. But the other side of that coin is this. When you're in public service for vulnerable people, everybody that does these kinds of jobs, they ought to think about why they're in this business. And they ought to think about where they're getting their money for their salaries. Now, a little bit of caveat of how I come up with this. Medicaid, you take a little recipient, like this little lady right over here, or any other body. If they need services, what happens? Oh, you can get plugged in here, you can get plugged in over here, you get plugged over here, and you might not get it because it's state dollars or something. But anyway, the point is, you can only get so much. And that's a recipient that you're working for. So when you consider your salary and how important you are and how plush you are, no matter what position you fill, think about that little person that's getting those services or not getting those 1,100, 1,500 positions that can't even be filled. Think about it in terms of your salary, is how you adjust your salary to those little people. Now that's just what I call common sense. Of course, I live on a low budget, so, you know, common sense is natural to me. But when you think you're worth more than you are, then you ought to take your legs out from under you so you can see what the sky looks like. Because it's blue up there, you know? It's really blue. So think about the little people. Not, you know, money is not what we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at real people, real services, and what we can do to help them. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jerry. Our next item on the agenda is review and approval of the agenda and prior meeting minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes from October 26th and November the 8th. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? If so, is there a motion to approve the meeting, both those minutes? We'll do that in one motion.
I didn't make the November 8th meeting, so I can't move that.
I'll make a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
Second.
Who seconded?
Me.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Any questions or comments? Also, that includes, your motion includes the agenda, approval of the agenda. Okay.
Yes, sir. So amended.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, conflict of interest disclosure, Tracy Hayes, our general counsel and CCO.
Tracy said I'm just fine. Did someone else just join by telephone?
I'm sorry, Tracy, it's Dr. Martin, I got disconnected, had to reconnect.
Thank you. This is the time of the meeting where if any board member has an actual or potential conflict of interest that has not previously been reported, you should do so now. I did not receive any reports of conflict of interest since the last meeting. Hearing none, I think you can move forward.
Okay, thank you. If there's anyone that has not had their board member ID badges made, please do so tonight, either after the meeting. Also, tomorrow is the Employee Appreciation Luncheon at the Crown Plaza in Asheville. I don't, what are the hours? Is it 11:30 to?
About 11:30 to 3.
11:30 to 3?
Mike Norris is.
Okay. Okay, great. Mike Norris is free to speak. That's great. Another item we have, 2018 board and committee appointments. Tracy has done and Ryan have done some review, and I'd like you to consider one motion for all these items because there's quite a few of them. But here we go. Part of the motion would be to renew Steve Smith, Mike Norris, Jack Kahn in their respective appointments for additional 3-year terms. Judy Johansson's term will expire and she'll be a replacement from CFAC. The motion would also include approving Ira Dove to fill the attorney with healthcare expertise. The slot was vacated by Pam Holcomb. That is up for renewal in December 2018. The next part of the motion would be to confirm that Nancy Baker, Jeff Heck, Joyce Edwards, Michael Lavender, and Mars Pittman terms are set to expire in December 2018.
Yes, sir.
And will be up for renewal at that time. And the motion would need to be to confirm that Ronnie Beal, Pat McGinnis, Rick French, Dr. Rick Bunio, Billy Kennedy, Jim Holland, and Gary Blevins' terms are set to expire in December 2019 and are up for renewal at this time. And also, the motion would be to postpone a vote on the chair and the committee appointments until the January retreat, which is January 27th and 28th.
That's so moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Dr. Kahn. Is there a second?
Second.
Billy Kennedy, second. Any discussion?
No, I'm fine with the motion and everything. Is there any chance we could get a copy of all of
Yes.
that? So,
You just happen to
I
have it.
apologize.
Is there who seconded
Did you want to look at it before we vote?
I'm good, I just
Okay.
trying to remember all that 10 minutes from now. Kind of hard.
All right. There's a motion and a second. Is there a motion for approval? All in favor of the motion for approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. It appears to be unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Also, has anyone else thought about attending the NC Council meeting next week in Pinehurst? We may have an open registration if anybody else can attend. If so, would you contact Ryan, let her know? Steve Smith may not be able to go, and looks like he probably will not definitely be able to go. So just want to mention that.
Too much whooping cough.
Yeah. Our next item is our report from our Chief Executive Officer, Brian Ingram. Brian?
Participation gift today, right?
Got that my last
Oh,
comment.
okay, so we'll get a lot of reminders about that. Well, there is Cardinal, and then everything else. So maybe I'll do the everything else first, and then if you have any questions or just want maybe some help kind of processing all of what's happened. be happy to try to help with that. We've had an additional white paper put out by the department that is more specific to the interface of the behavioral health and IDD world with Medicaid transformation and the 1115 waiver, so there's a little more information there about that, and I wouldn't say that there are any real surprises about things, a little more definition, and we could certainly point you to that content on the website or make a hard copy if you're interested. There was also a request for information was released by, but actually the Division of Health Benefits or DHHS? I think it's DHHS. Kind of in this middle zone here of, I'm not sure who's doing what exactly, and I think it's DHHS. And this was as anticipated. The idea being that the department would get ideas from potential bidders on standard plan or tailored plan business. And it was worded in such a way that it was not entirely clear if you were interested in competing for a tailored plan, if you should be responding or not. And we did actually have an opportunity, some of us were meeting with the secretary and asked, and the response was, well, sure, why not? So we are in the process of putting together an application, and we are doing so in partnership with our coalition members, Alliance and Trillium. So while technically we have to submit a letter identifying us individually, I think it should be a common response. Those are the big things there. A lot of conversation about whether or not that it's referred to mild to moderate population. On the behavioral health side, this would really not involve IDD folks, but these are individuals who would not be in the tailored plan. So again, if you get some perspective on this, the latest estimate is that there would be about 120,000 people statewide that would be in the tailored plan. And again, this is intended for individuals that have the most complex behavioral health and IDD needs, including comorbidity with health problems. And that they would be, kind of have a plan for them specifically that would be more focused on their particular needs. Everyone else ends up in a standard plan for a fully integrated behavioral health and physical health experience, if you will. So that would mean that there would be some number of members that are now under our capitation and for whom we manage care would be moved to that standard plan, which would have a significant impact on our capitation, some effect on what we do just in the day-to-day of managing care, and of course for that to occur, we would certainly be interested in seeing some very specific language about our future and our participation and the interest in LME MCOs emerging as entities that would be well suited for attaining contracts for tailored plans. This is kind of a big policy and political fork in the road that I think we'll be facing in January. A lot of discussion and debate about that. Otherwise, as I mentioned, we had the launch of our coalition and it seemed to go very, very well. We got a lot of positive comments from folks out in the world that we had contacted either directly or kind of fed us back their well wishes, and we continue to progress with the evolution of that partnership, and so far so good, I would say. On Cardinal, it's hard to keep up. I think there've been probably at least three pretty big events this week. The first of which being the move by DHHS to go and enter into a situation of controlling that organization, and it's to read pretty carefully the way the letter's written around what is actually occurring. It has to do with the LME functions of Cardinal, which is separate from Medicaid managed care functions. Then we followed with all the comments by Cardinal about feeling that that was an unfair action and some threats around that, which were then followed by DHHS's injunction around Cardinal interfering in any way, shape, or manner with the activities of the state in, I'm not sure what's the proper verb, Tracy, exerting their control over the LME functions. Whatever word would be used to shorten that is the word I would use. I'm not sure what it is, but at any rate, that's the stage we're at. And certainly is confusing for people to understand how all of that can occur. I think people have some sense of the why, because there's been such displeasure, frustration, anger with decisions that have been made and behavior and public statements. So it's really reached a boiling point this week, and it even involved there was an Associated Press article that I read last night, and happened to be on a phone with someone today who was in Michigan this week, and it was all the buzz there as well. So this is not this is unprecedented, and it's not over. So, the plan that the Secretary has is to reconstitute a board that would be consistent with the legislation in the way that we've seated our board with all the required positions. There is an interim CEO in place, and then several executives left, and of course there was the great turmoil over the severance, and I guess now there's been a demand that DHHS has placed. This is really where it gets kind of interesting, since they're essentially controlling some element of the finances. I guess the state would be repaying itself the $3.8 million associated with those severances, and I think they created a deadline of Friday for that. So, gee, isn't that something?
We're not Cardinal.
WNC. WNC. It, of course, these kind of things, and it's happened all along. Those that are critical of the LME MCO system, it's a great opportunity for them to generalize as if we're all the same, and certainly we're not. And that, despite the fact that that's been pointed out repeatedly, is still an opportune soundbite for folks. This can't go on for too long with DHHS there. I think there's more than a little concern about their role with all of this. And there's some really kind of interesting legal and technical questions about all of this that it's so unprecedented that as you might imagine, the law and policy don't always fit perfectly with what gets done. People use their best judgment, and by and large, I think if you're not on the board of Cardinal, or you're not Richard Topping, you probably think that it was a good move by the state to exert this degree of pressure and influence in the situation, so. What are you folks hearing, or do you have any questions?
The point, I mean, being a public company, this stuff came out. And when if they turn over all this care to private companies, this kind of stuff could happen and we'd never know it.
It happen probably routinely.
Right.
We gotta ask our CFO here, so we won't put him on the spot. Having worked in for-profit part of the industry, I'm sure, well, yeah, I mean, that's.
It's a concern to me about the, like you say, the bad press that public LME MCOs are getting when so many of us are doing so well. So, and constantly trying to improve and reinvest those savings back into the community. So it's sad.
Yeah, and some of it is just, I'm not going to get into the weeds of all of this, but the assertion that somehow Cardinal is not a government / public organization are just incorrect. I mean, it just, there isn't any way you could construe it differently. I mean, that part of the law, has always been clearly pointed out by our general counsel to everyone here. There seems to be a fundamental, well, at the very least, source of irritation on behalf of members of the General Assembly and the HHS. So maybe that covers that.
Is DHHS on site now at Cardinal?
I have been. I don't know, I guess we understood there were like 4 or 5 folks there.
So out of the millions they paid out, how many did that include? Was it 3 or 4 or 5?
3.8 was the severance agreements total that, and then separate would have been Richard's salary over whatever period of time.
So he got a portion of the 3 point something, and then some other execs got the rest of it?
Well, and again, the severance, and this was another thing that, the understanding of how this worked, by Richard leaving, that was actually a trigger for members of the executive team to also be able to leave and trigger their severance. So this was, set up in kind of a down the middle fashion.
And I understand the legislature's trying to get that money back.
Well, and just, think about this for a second. There's getting the money back from Cardinal versus there's getting the money back from the individuals.
Okay.
So getting the money back from Cardinal, that would seem like that could happen. I mean,
They can cut the tap and do that.
Well, this is so unprecedented. Again, there isn't where are the rules for this? Well, nobody anticipated anything like this ever happening, So, the notion that the secretary could terminate or cease the membership of board members is really, technically what she did was withdrew the approval of the secretary for the special board composition allowance that there is. So technically, board members weren't removed, it's just that there is no longer a board structure that the secretary has approved. So you see, it's full of kind of strange things that, again, people did the best they could do to wade into this, given, does the law ever imagine things like this? No.
Have you heard anything about the Attorney General being involved in any of this?
I have not.
I guess in addition to DHHS staff, there were SBI folks that accompanied DHHS folks when they moved in. And
That's the Attorney General.
well, that may have, and I don't want to say that I know, what they were doing or why they were doing, but, there was quite a bit made about the removal of individuals and making sure that they were not allowed there. And of course, sometimes that involves exertion of some amount of influence by authority, so it may be pertaining to that. I don't know.
For the client's sake, I sure hope they have a good cash flow situation, because it's going to be a double hit. It's not 3.8 instead of 1.6 if the state takes the money back. Because they paid it out over here, and they're going to pay it to the state. So that's 3.8 plus 3.8.
You got a pretty
A lot
healthy
of
fund balance.
organizations, that would kill their fund balance.
Yeah, no, that's not gonna leave a mark. I will say that, I don't know, it's been, so many things have been circulating. Cardinal, put out a message to, providers and members, and the Secretary's statements were pretty clear that, nothing would be changing for anyone. It's business as usual from the perspective of, again, providers and contracts and payments and members and services and all of that. And their goal is to have a reconstituted board by the middle of December.
And I was in a meeting where the secretary spoke yesterday to about 100, well over 100 county commissioners, and she may have been tailoring her comments to the fact that there was a room full of county commissioners, but she did mention reconstituting the board, and they were coordinating it with the counties, the commissioners in the individual counties. So I don't know whether they're going to go back to the old system where the commissioners appoint the board, or I don't know what they're going to do, but she did mention that. And I did want to, the main thing I wanted to point out was, during her comments, she did mention Vaya, and she did seem to indicate that there were no problems with Vaya, and that everything was going well, and that
Good to know.
and yeah, and all the commissioners in the Cardinal, from the Cardinal, because there were commissioners from all over the state, because it was a large meeting and all. They're all sweating. They're all pouring sweat. But I will say this, she doesn't completely understand yet, and I'm new to the board, but she does not fully understand the history of the what's transpired in the past, or the actual structure right now, as best I could surmise from her 45 minutes of comments, but I'm sure she's getting there.
The other thing is they provided that out, if you will, a few years ago, where certain, what's the word I'm looking for, not only counties, but groups of counties could reconstitute, like, and run their
Well, the
own.
168 provision in law. Yeah. Well, I think they probably, from the county perspective, there's 2 or 3 things going on. One, and I mean no disrespect to anybody from Western or affiliated with that, kind of our experience there was, some were just so, I don't know what the word is, they just really didn't want to have a lot of involvement with the LME MCO anymore. It's kind of like, man, that's just, leave that alone. Let somebody else deal with that. And I'm sure there are others that will want to go in and say, we'll, let us come in here, we'll fix this, we'll take care of it. And then there are those that are going to want to leave Cardinal. So you put that in a pot and stir that around a little bit, and you got something. But to answer your question, the law we're not going by the law that we went through, actually at that time of the merger with Western, where there are specific criteria for board membership. So that's the standard practice. So they would need to come under that part of the law. There is also a section of that that then allows for some other board structure if it's approved by some number of counties or something, and the secretary then has to agree to that. Well, she said, no, I'm not agreeing to that, so they're gonna have to go to the same structure that sets our requirements. So, we good?
Counties are just arms of the state too, so, you know, we're beholden to the same thing, so if you don't forget that, it's your peril, don't forget that, it's your peril.
Okay.
Need to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A1 in order to prevent disclosure of competitive healthcare information that's privileged or confidential pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 122C, 126.1, or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes, or to consult with attorneys pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we take your pick.
Mike and Ron.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous.
By myself.
All right, the next item we have on the agenda is the report of the Finance Committee and the Chief Financial Officer, Clark. Phil?
Sorry, I interrupted.
That's okay. Go ahead, Clark.
Thank you, Rick. The Finance Committee met this afternoon and reviewed the normal financial statements and budget amendments that we typically do in a meeting. I'll briefly run through some of the documents. The first document in your packet is the current ratios for both Medicaid and total current ratio. Those ratios declined slightly in the month because the current assets increased by $2.5 million, whereas the current liabilities increased by $4.4 million. The defensive interval actually went up a little bit because the operating expenses are under control. And the medical loss ratio is document number 3, which shows the medical loss ratio is still on an increasing trend for the year. If you look at document number 4, which is the actual financial statements in some detail, you'll see that the revenue from the state has declined, is slightly behind budget by about $500,000. But you'll also see that the services are very close to budget, and the administrative expenses are really the thing that we have going for us. The administrative expenses are under control. We actually are generating a favorable variance on administrative expenses.
Think the board can get a raise then?
I think we could get not to the level of Cardinal, if that's what you're thinking.
You try, Ronnie. Gotta ask.
They seem to be, gotta ask. Seems to be wide open.
So administrative expenses are under budget by about almost $3.8 million, $3.7 million in total, about 3.3 on the Medicaid side and about 400,000 on the non-Medicaid side. So while we're doing an excellent job on controlling administrative expenses, we're still generating a net loss overall of about $90,000 on the Medicaid side, close to break even, but a little over $1 million on the non-Medicaid side for a total of about $1.1 million combined. The rest of the documents we went through, most of them were kind of graphical representations of some of the numbers that I just reviewed with you in the financial statements. We reviewed graphical representations of the revenue streams. We looked at the Medicaid service budget variance. There really wasn't much of a variance. It's very close to budget. The Medicaid expenses by service line, there's a graphical representation, and the pie chart, which is fairly stable from one month to the next. We also reviewed the comparative balance sheet as well as the cash flow statements. Cash did increase during the month, but that's primarily because we were able to collect accounts receivable on the Medicaid waiver of almost $3 million. And our liabilities did go up, as I mentioned before, about a little over $2 million in accounts payable and $2 million in IBNR. The fund balance did decrease during the month by about $700,000. And those were the primary, those were all of the financial statements and the business that we reviewed during the Finance Committee meeting.
Is there a motion to approve the financial reports?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Did you get that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
And the Finance Committee also reviewed some budget revisions. The budget revisions of about $1.3 million. There was about $75,000 an increase in the interest income that we expect to earn. There was about almost an $800,000 increase in state and federal funding. About the biggest part of that, $450,000, came from the funds for NC START. There were about $158,000 related with the state non-UCR TLCI program. $175,000 related to non-UCR community living assistance, and $200,000 related to state UCR TCLI. And then there was a reduction in the federal funds of about $267,000. That relates to your $788,000. We also had a $175,000 increase in miscellaneous revenue. Most of that is $250,000 increase in the C-Live revenue from the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, offset by some decreases from the state. And then we had a $233,000 increase in the fund balance for additional expenses related to the Vaya Total Care Department, which we had agreed, I guess, in the budget to fund out of the fund balance. So those are the budget revisions contained in budget revision number 5, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve budget revision number 5?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion. That's hearing. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Clark.
And can you just give that young man over there a gold star? I mean, for somebody as new as he is,
He just
to
picks
roll
right.
those acronyms off like that. How many years have I been on
The
this board?
TCLI and the TLCI, there's some.
I've been on here how many years, and I can't remember.
Thank you, Clark. Next item on the agenda, Regulatory Compliance and Quality Committee report, Billy Kennedy.
Well, we had a good meeting today, and we did several things. We reviewed we did our monthly reports on our TCLI monthly report. We met 5 of the state targets and have 3 that we're still not meeting in September, but we've got good plans to improve those and meet those standards. Went over our core performance measures, our compliance log, and we had some Human Rights Committee recommendations, and we voted to implement for the board or the organization implement these 3 recommendations that were put forward by the Vaya Health Human Rights Committee. And that's the Vaya Care Coordinators receive an annual update on current best practices for guardians. This would allow care coordinators to be more aware of potential member rights violations and report as appropriate. Recommend that Vaya provide access to informational materials concerning the concept of dignity of risk as it relates to persons with disabilities, and recommend that Vaya offer further education to members regarding how to restore rights or pursue a different level of guardianship. So these are important things that we need to work on some more and add into our quality programs as we're doing. We're looking at the upcoming state standards and the super measures that will be implemented next year, and the quality team is doing a great job of trying to set standards and reach those goals before we come into that before we come into the penalty period, I guess, is next July. And it's kind of tricky because you don't really know. You're not going to know you've got the penalty until you get the information, and we have about a 3-month delay on a lot of our data because the claims take time to process them for different reasons. So we're constantly updating the 3 months before to see accurate data, and so it's going to be a trick. We went over our IDD quarterly dashboard and our appeals quarterly report, and then Quality Improvement Committee went over stuff they're working on, which is all great stuff they're doing to keep trying to tweak the system so that we're ahead of the game on our data and working to solve these problems before they really become bigger problems. So I'm real impressed with our quality improvement team, and I think they did a great job, and I'm always learning something in the meeting. And Jack and I are glad to be both here today because we're co-chairs of this, so we both take our role seriously, and we've been glad that one or the other has been able to be here through the meeting so that we get a continuity there. I certainly appreciate his medical expertise, which I don't have. So.
I'll just say one more thing. The Finance Committee had to suffer through 17 pages of documents.
We had
118. Martyred.
You got it.
But it's important stuff, and it is nice for us to go over. So we take it seriously, and I think things are on track to be going well. So that's my report.
All right, thank you, Billy. Pat, can you give us a brief report, Consumer and Family Advisory Committee report? Can you hear us?
I have asked that Nancy Baker do that tonight if I'm driving.
All right, Nancy, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Could you give us
I give you a brief update. I didn't know I was going to have to do this, but that's okay. We're getting ready to have our December meetings. We're going to have 2 joint meetings. The Old Western Highlands and Silver are going to be meeting Monday night in Lake Julia for a dinner, and we're going to have a brief meeting there. And then Boone and Lenore will be meeting, and I don't have those dates. Pat might be able to give those to us. So basically, we've had a really good year. We've done a lot of self-evaluations. We went around and put together what we have done, our accomplishments, getting ready to put some goals together. We had a retreat. It was really awesome. We learned a great deal. Everybody left there really ready to go to work and do exactly what we need to do. We had a state there reminding us of our obligations. So I feel like Feedback's had a great year, and I'm looking forward to getting back in January and getting our every other month meetings and our steering committee meetings and moving forward. This is Pat. Our meeting with Boone, we're the Central and the Northern Region are meeting together, and it is December the 11th at 11 o'clock at Daniel Boone Inn. Nancy, I wish to apologize to you. I had asked staff, our liaisons last week to let you know I would be out of town, and had asked them to provide you with an update on all the different regions. I guess there was a communication breakdown, and I'm sorry for that. And I'm sorry that. That's okay, Pat. That's okay, Pat. We got it done. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Our next report, Provider Advisory Council report, call on Jeannie Duncan. She's not here.
I'm not feeling well.
Okay. Anybody else can do that report, or do you want to move right on?
Well, I could just say a few things. I mean, we have a very wonderful, from our Provider Advisory Council, we typically have 40 to 50 people plus who participate, the members in that, and many times Nancy Baker or another individual, one of our members, joins us also. This past month, they've been doing a lot of review. Brian came and shared the information about the coalition. As a matter of fact, the day the coalition announcement was made public happened to just be the day of our Provider Advisory Council. So it was really great that Brian was able to come join us in the afternoon and show the website and walk through that and answer people's questions and educate people. It was just a great opportunity for that. We ended the day meeting with a smaller group of our comprehensive providers, our 5 largest providers across the 23 counties, and spoke to them very directly about the super measures and several of the interventions that we are doing with them in regard to community hospital inpatient discharges. And we did a big data presentation. We sort of did, here's who's doing well among you, who needs to do better, and here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to pay you to do that, and how your contract's going to change. So it was a very full agenda on that day. We do have it scheduled for some of you who are part of, have heard us talk about the Western North Carolina Substance Use Alliance plan for the region. On January 25th, we are doing pretty much just about a good part of the day from 10 to about 3 walkthrough of that complete plan for our providers. Tara Larson is going to come and facilitate that meeting for us, and they're going to dedicate a whole day of looking at that plan, looking at their roles and responsibilities, and really begin to make some assignments to those providers across our region. So they are very, very active. They're very, I think, very good at participating with us, and I think it was just, again, really great that Brian was able to come spend time with them and really to hear it directly from him about the coalition. And I think it went over well. I mean, don't you think, Brian? I mean, the questions were just very basic. We've been talking to them so much between Brian, myself, and some of the other staff. I don't think it was shocking. I think they see that we are really trying to create a place for ourselves in the future, and they need to continue to improve their quality and delivery and accountability to be what we want to offer to the plans. So I feel very good about that. We, as we have a great board, a great CFAC, our Provider Advisory Council, I've said this several times the last couple of months because I pretty regularly go to those meetings. There's been a lot of maturity among that group. They have been very dedicated and they're very participatory with us. So we're fortunate for that. Thank you.
Thank you. County Commissioner Advisory Board report.
Before I do that, do we need a board motion to approve these 3 recommendations from the Human Rights Committee? We
I
didn't
don't
vote.
believe so, because your committee approved them.
Okay, thank you. We had a good County Commission Advisory Board, had a good turnout. Mainly it was, a lot of them were coming for information. They were curious about what was going on, and I think having been on as a county commissioner and then on as a board member and going through that transition, I'm really glad we're still involved in the county commissioners, and I think their involvement shows that they care about this too, and realize that they have a voice in this, even though they were kind of quiet that night. But they do have a place to get their input, and I think that's important. We also passed a resolution, our equivalency at the Board of County Commissioners with unanimously to match the resolution that we passed in the board last month, I guess. And so that's good to have them show that all the counties have supported the same plan we're working on. So, mainly a lot of the time was Brian answering questions and talking about the issues he's been talking about here. So I'm hearing it again, and it's good because
The same?
No, it was a little different. But for the people that haven't been on this board, it's real important to catch them up and keep them current, and especially with what's going on with the Cardinal and all that. It's the more outreach and connection we can have with those counties, I think the better they'll realize that our services are different than that. And I think it's the unknown that they worry about more than the known. So it went well. We had focused on the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Opioid Leadership Forums and the Medicaid reform proposal. And then we set our next meeting. It's an open there, so. Sorry, I pulled out the wrong page there, but mainly it was talking about Brian talking about the coalition, and they had some questions about that, but it was really good. So, sorry, that's a scattered report. But.
Thank you, Billy. Michael, you have something?
I was just,
Okay.
He was looking at my list of who was on that board from his county. So.
And Rick, there's a couple other things going on, and we discussed it yesterday. There's a, and I know Buncombe was on the front end of this, there's a movement now among the counties to retain attorneys, and it's not a class action lawsuit, but there is going to be a large litigation around this opioid damage, and it's spreading. The association's going to act as a clearinghouse for information and I guess legal counsel, but they're not going to actually participate in the lawsuit. So that's moving forward. Other counties are engaging, meeting with attorneys. They're looking for damages for all the costs to the counties from the distributors and the pharmaceutical manufacturers. It's going to be big news, I think, before it's over with. Just to put it out there.
We're going after the distributor first.
Yeah.
By the way, Cardinal is one of the big distributors.
Yeah.
Just throw that in
Not the
there.
same Cardinal, it's a different.
Right.
Yeah, but I just want to throw that in.
Yeah. It's also our state bird.
Yeah. There's also, but there's three main distributors, and of course the DEA, if you don't know, has been completely gutted. Congress passed a law where they cannot touch the distributors. And everybody at DEA is left. There's nobody, literally everybody has gone. The head honcho at DEA is who wrote the litigation that Congress passed to protect the distributors. So, like Gary was telling you, the association, we're participating, but
yeah, not as a
but as far as the class action, most states are going after them individually. I think there's 12 states now that's individual. And Buncombe County is one of the first counties to sign up to go after. And it's going to be a long journey. It's going to be an expensive journey with these pharmaceuticals. But you are seeing results on a smaller scale.
Well, there was a case settled already in West Virginia.
That's right.
So there is some
pharmacy.
Some precedent being.
Yeah, and there's the tracking system is even gone away. So it's not good. But the states, what it's costing the counties, especially rural counties, we're going to have those numbers.
Yeah.
We're going to have those numbers from the association. And one more thing I want to add about our Stepping Up program that y'all are very aware of. We're doing experimental, and it's getting well off the ground. We've got it set up in Vance, Franklin, Halifax, there's 4 counties. And went up there 2 weeks ago, and it takes a lot to get it set up. And the problem we have, I mean, we would love to partner, like Macon would love to partner with Jackson, Haywood, Swain, whoever. We have nowhere to send the patients. There's nowhere to send them. ADAC in Asheville, I think, is 4 weeks out. Boston Center, the walk-in centers, involuntaries are up in our area very much. So is voluntaries. The walk-in centers is full bore. But it's people wanting help, and that's the real problem. If you want to get down to the real nuts and bolts. But our jail program is working well. It's now we've moved it on to other. We've had to loan them money, but they're doing it. Vaya don't pay for that. They do in a way, but yes they do. But Appalachian's doing a good job with the jail program. We now started doing classes instead of individuals, and you sort of got a captive audience, say, So but it seems to be working. Our pregnancy rates, we're keeping up with those now. He's walking through the Macon County Mental. Any of you counties, if you just go to your health department, we're up to about 75% of those who with unwanted pregnancies that's walking through the door is addicted. So we're trying to get a program set up for that. So it's ongoing. It's still we had our meeting in our box with our municipalities. We're trying to get our municipalities involved. In every county, we're working in several counties. I'm working in about 9 counties, and we're trying to get that set up. Because it's going to take a local effort, and we need their help financially, as Gary will tell you from our municipalities also, and Billy will tell you the same thing. So,
Me too.
So there's a lot going on, and we now have registered 9 deaths in Macon County due to fentanyl. so far. So we can pretty well trace those 9 to that, so.
Ronnie, one other thing that you mentioned earlier, and I want to thank Vaya for sending a team. I'm chairing, and the association is hosting a summit or conference next week on Wednesday at the Renaissance Center, I guess.
Craft Ladder?
I don't know, I don't know, wherever it is, it's somewhere here, I'll know next week. But on child welfare, specifically on how kids can thrive in North Carolina and what counties can do to support that, but more to the point of how the child welfare reform is going to move forward. And the elements of that are going to be discussed, I think, at length. And we've got a team from every county in western North Carolina signed up to be there next week. So, and thank you, Vaya, for your some participation in that.
Yeah. And
so
the newest report out, and Gary's got this, and you'll have that report there at the meeting, is 1 in 5 kids under the age of 14 has some type of mental disability now. That's 300,000 kids in Macon County, not Macon County, in Macon State. Some of those in Macon County we've identified to our school system, and that percentage continues to increase. So, as all counties do, but 300,000 kids, if 300,000 kids had the flu, it'd be on the front page. And so, and those kids will grow up. They won't be 14 or 9 long. And so we'll be seeing those folks for a long time.
If I could just, I'll go back over real quick what we did at the meeting. I was on the wrong page before, but we did our introductions, confidentiality agreements, reviewed our minutes, introduced Clark Phillip, he was there as the new, and Brian's talk was really Medicaid transformation update. And then we had a good presentation from Rhonda Cox on the Vaya Total Care, and I think they were very interested in that. And then this substantial equivalency motion that we voted on, as I said, and an opioid update from Craig Martin, who our chief medical officer, and that was very good too for working to dispel some of the myths of the opioid crisis and what's going on with that. And then Tommy Duncan, our business manager, presented the gap analysis, and I encouraged them all to read that too. I know it's a long document, but it really does tell you what's going on. And that's it. Excuse my scatteredness on the previous speech.
Thank you, everyone. We have one more item, your other business, the HRC annual report. Call on Tracy.
Sure. The Human Rights Committee is required under state law to provide an annual report to this board. It's included in your packet, in the back of the packet. I'm not going to go over the entire thing. They review the membership. They identify the training that was provided to HRC members this past fiscal year, including on perception of care, the grievance process, the supports intensity scale, resource allocation, contract performance, investigations, confidentiality, and incidents. The committee met 4 times during the last fiscal year, in August, November, February, and May. They reviewed over the last fiscal year aggregate data for a total of 2,557 incidents, 2,303 level 2, 254 level 3, and 567 grievances. So that is your annual report from the HRC.
Thank you, Tracy. I also just want to remind you again, we have some Christmas gifts or holiday gifts in the back.
We take those that are not here, we can take.
You're right.
We're so generous. We'll check with Mike to be sure it's.
Yeah, I take Narcissus.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Just a sign.